Hi everyone. With the advancement in technology and challenges post pandemic, there has been a lot of laws which are revisited and reintroduced. Some of these laws are new labor codes. In this video, we will be discussing the labor laws of Southeast Asia and their impact on businesses. To understand this, we have an expert with us. We have Ojasvita Srivastava. She's General Counsel at Securitas Group. Hi, Ojasvita.
Hi, Avani. Thank you for having me here.
So start with my first question. New labor codes have been introduced, but they have been introduced in a phased manner. So can you highlight some of these new labor codes and also how do they compare with international standards?
There have been new labor codes that have been introduced in India, and the intention behind these labor codes is actually to boost investments and improve the ease of doing business. It's very important to look at what is the purpose of a legislature when they are trying to make any changes in the labor codes, right? Especially now, given that we are all hit by a pandemic and all economies are looking to boost investments and are looking to revive the labor situation. Now, in India, we have focused a lot on consolidation and on making it easier to engage labor. And what they have, in fact, done here is that there were some 44 central codes that had like almost 1,500 sections in it. And now that has been consolidated into four codes, and I think there are about 480 sections in it. So it's just four codes on. One is on wages, the code on wages. Then there is one on occupational safety, health, and working conditions. And there is industrial relations, and then there's a code on social security, right? And if you look at what the common themes that are running through all these codes, essentially, is firstly, I think one of the biggest improvements or one of the biggest achievements of these new codes is that there is now a uniform definition of wages. So, immaterial of what industry, what kind of a sector it is, there is now a uniform definition of what is meant by wages and what all is included within that remuneration in terms of whether it is allowance for rent or for conveyance or any different kinds of allowances, right? Then another improvement is that they have introduced something somebody called an inspector cum facilitator. So there used to be just an inspector earlier. Now that person also has the responsibility in helping both the employers and the employees in implementing of those codes, right? So he's more a facilitator and not just an inspector anymore. And I think there is also some sort of a leeway or relaxation for employers now in terms of allowing compounding of at least first offenses. So if there is, say, for example, a non-compliance, then at least in the first instance, you can get away by paying 50% of the maximum fine provided. So there have been a number of advantages for companies, for employers, in terms of, obviously, first of all, it's made easier to do business. Secondly, it's simpler and a clearer process. There is uniformity, and there's also uniformity in terms of the employees to which it is applicable. So these codes are applicable to everybody: skilled, semi-skilled, unskilled, supervisory, managerial, all kinds of employees. Then, of course, one of the biggest advantages, like I said, is that the definition of wages is, clarified. So, from an employer's perspective, it means that there is going to be less litigation, less cost of compliance. Consolidation also means earlier there used to be different codes. For example, on wages, right? You have a minimum wages act, you have a payment of bonus act, you have a payment of wages act, you have an equal remuneration act. All of them had to be maintained compliances separately. Now all of that is consolidated. So again, the cost of compliance has come down, the requirement of compliance has come down. From an employee's perspective, again, this is a code that is quite advantageous, especially to those who are in the unorganized sector. So now even those people who are in the unorganized sector are guaranteed at least a minimum wage under the new code, right? Then their employers basically are allowed to make certain deductions in case there are any, anything that is owed by an employee. So the new code now says that those reductions cannot be more than 50%. So that is good for the employees again. Then there is a provision under the new law that the central government will introduce something called a floor wage, and employers can now set whatever their minimum wages or wages for their employees over and above that floor wage. And this floor wage is across the country. So there's more uniformity, because somebody is in Bihar or because somebody is in Maharashtra will not really affect at least the minimum wage. The floor wages will be uniform across the country. And then also from an employee's perspective, I think any kind of a claim that you have for any unpaid wages. Earlier, I think there was a limitation cap of between 6 months to 2 years, and now I think they can raise it all the way up to 3 years. So there are a lot of beneficial clauses both for an employer and an employee in the new code, and hopefully this will help India improve its ranking in terms of ease of doing business going forward. So I think that's the main focus of these new codes, new improvements in the labor codes.
Thank you for sharing the information. I think it tells a lot about new labor reforms. But coming to, other laws in Southeast Asia, Indonesia's omnibus laws have been creating a lot of buzz and are quite popularly discussed. So can you take through them and, how it has helped and impacted the labor laws and compliances for companies there?
Indonesian omnibus law actually has been discussed a lot. It is both very revolutionary for a country like Indonesia, but also quite unpopular because of the changes that have been made. Again, the Indonesian law also focuses on increasing the ease of doing business in Indonesia. Right now, Indonesia has a lot of licensing requirements, has a lot of very strict regulations. And then I believe it was November 2020 that the president, who had assured this as one of his reforms during elections, decided to implement this omnibus law. And again, like the Indian law, there is a long list of legislations that have been amended as a result of this omnibus law. I think there are like 76 existing laws that have been amended. And then there are almost 5,000 central laws, 16,000 regional government laws that have been eliminated by this omnibus law. So it's a very comprehensive, humongous, task that the government of Indonesia has overtaken. If you look at what exactly it means, so essentially, I would say it has reduced the complexity in business licensing. So earlier, to set up an industry in Indonesia, you had to get a license from the central government, then from the state government, and from the local government. So there was multi layers of licensing that one had to comply, and it was very complex. So that system has been simplified completely. They have come up with a risk-based approach. So basically, for very high risk industries, they would require extreme licensing, and then there are something less onerous for medium risk, and for low risk, I believe they have done away with the entire licensing process altogether. Then it has reduced the obligations for any kind of foreign investments. So, there used to be a positive investment list that used to be there they used to maintain a negative investment list, which has now been replaced by a positive investment list. And what that means is, barring 6 business sectors, all other sectors in Indonesia have been opened up for 100% foreign investment. So again, to attract more and more investments from outside Indonesia. Then I think taxation has improved a lot. There is a lot of streamlining, overlapping regulations have been done away with. So whether it's income tax, corporate tax, dividend tax, a lot of these taxations have been streamlined to make it more attractive, make Indonesia more attractive, from an investment point of view. And then finally, of course, our topic for discussion in terms of labor laws. there have been a lot of changes in this, mainly focused on foreign employees. Their restrictions on foreign employees have been relaxed. So earlier, for example, if you had a foreign employee posted in Indonesia and their contract expired, you couldn't replace them with another foreign employee. But now you can. Then there were also, licenses that were required for foreign employees, and there were restrictions, or there had to be explanations given. Those have been now expanded. Those kind of licensing restrictions are relaxed for a lot of industries. Similarly, fixed-term contracts have also been, improved on, and a lot of relaxation has happened there. Outsourcing industry, which is also picking up in Indonesia, that has undergone a lot of relaxation. Earlier, it was very limited supporting activities, that one could outsource. That's not the case anymore. And then the controversial part of it, that is the terms of employment that have now changed under the omnibus law. So working hours have been increased. So earlier, whatever was the working hours has now undergone changes, and it has increased. Though I think overtime has stayed the same, but then there is now a cap of how many, that whatever was the cap earlier has now been increased. So the number of hours that you can work in a day has increased as well. In terms of leaves and time off, that also has been relaxed. So there was earlier 2 days per 5 days working day allowed to be off. Now that restriction is now gone, so you can still have one day on a 6 days working week. Minimum wage has the calculation of minimum wage has been revised. So that again, it is more to encourage employers to have the kind of flexibility that they need to employ more people, or employ people that was earlier difficult for them to do. Termination and severance pay. Now, in India, we do not have the concept of severance pay, but a lot of Southeast Asian countries have severance pay. So when they leave, for example, the employer has to pay them a certain amount. That has been capped. So a lot of changes in terms of labor law restrictions have happened under the omnibus law.
Yeah, sure. I think by listening to this, we can understand that how Indonesia's new laws have simplified the regulations and compliances in the country. Coming to Vietnam, Vietnam also has a new labor code altogether. So, can you tell us more about it and how they have dealt with labor protection aspects?
Vietnam has also brought in a new labor code, and again, these deal with protection of the labor in Vietnam. The definition of labor itself has changed in Vietnam. So it also now includes contract labors and non-contractual labors. So any contract with an indefinite term of labor contract as well as definite term labor. So they are contractual employees as well as full-time permanent employees. Everybody is included under the labor code. Then I think they've allowed for electronic contract electronic contract execution, which was earlier not recognized. So labor contracts can be electronically signed now, and I think that is coming more from the pandemic. Uh, Unilateral termination of contracts is a new feature that is allowed both for an employee and an employer under certain circumstances. So an employer is allowed to unilaterally terminate the employee under given statutory reasons, and employees can also unilaterally terminate the contract if they have served their notice period. Then the I think then there are some very minor changes to managerial contracts that are not really affecting the overall ease of doing business, but it allows higher probation for, say, higher management staff. There's flexibility in salary schemes. What does affect companies like ours, for example, are longer overtime. So now longer overtime is allowed as opposed to what it was earlier. I think it went from 30 hours to 40 hours per month now. The retirement age has increased. So earlier, there was a retirement age of 55 for women and 60 for men. Has now gone up to 60 for women and 62 for men. So, from an employer's perspective, when you are looking at a longer term of employment, and your cost would automatically get affected by that. So yeah, those are the changes that have been made in Vietnam again to protect the labor and also to basically navigate through these difficult pandemic times. When we are trying to revive the economies and make processes simpler.
After listening to labor codes of India, Indonesia, Vietnam, whom do you think, like, which South Asian country is pioneering in robust labor codes in Southeast Asia? And also, what are some of the key takeaways which other jurisdictions can take from them?
I don't think I'm an expert on labor law, and I don't think I'm an expert on all the labor laws of the entire region. But from what little I know, um, I think there are challenges in each of these countries. Mostly the Southeast Asian countries or Asian countries in general have a lot of unskilled labor. The cost of labor is quite low. And also, there is a huge population in most of these countries. So there is a lot of people available for doing that work. The ideal labor laws, labor codes that one should look up to are more in countries where there is where it's the right opposite of this, right? So, given our circumstances, I think it has to be based on what is the circumstance of the country. So, yes, there are very good labor laws in some countries within our region as well, like Australia. But then it is an advanced country. It has again, very robust labor laws. It also allows employees to stand up and enforce laws. It's not as easy in India or most of these South Asian countries. The labor force is less educated, less able to stand up for themselves. So I think there is some distance to cover. But I don't think it is possible to enforce an Australian labor code in India because that is an ideal, but that is not a standard that can be complied with in countries like ours because our competitive edge is basically cheaper labor. So if we start applying labor codes of more advanced countries, it's likely that the businesses will suffer. So that's my opinion on this.
Thank you so much. I think people can now better understand the different labor laws across Southeast Asia and also their impact on businesses and what are the new laws are all about. So thank you so much for your time, Ojasvita, once again.
Thank you, Avani. Thank you for having me, and I hope this has been helpful. Thanks a lot. Have a great evening.